Today's head-on is He Was After Wild Fowl. The subhead-on says, but Pocky Griswold says that he killed a bear, though a hog turned up missing. It says, time me and Doc Phillips of Penyon and Ock Morse and Harry Morse went down in Hyde County, North Carolina, hunting ducks and geese and swans, said Pocky Griswold, Hammondport's ex-lumber king, naturalist, and all-around sportsman. I might just as well have bagged 3 bears one day if Ock Morse hadn't broke in on me and got scared and begged me to quit. I knocked over one in spite of Ock, but I ought to have had the whole 3. We were scattered around in the reeds, hiding, waiting for ducks or geese or swan to come in, and of course weren't loaded for bear. I knew that there were plenty of bear in that country, but I hadn't thought anything about 'em. While I was crouching down in my reed blind, expecting every minute to get my work in on some ducks or geese or swan, I saw the reeds swaying and swishing and heard them cracking off to my right 100 yards or so. I'll bet a mess of mud pond eels, says I to myself, that Ock Morse has got tired of waiting in his blind and has come sloughing around up here, where he thinks he can do better and he'll scare every duck or goose or swan away before it gets within 9 miles of us. I felt considerable put out and crept along through the thick growth toward the spot where the reeds were in commotion to get within speaking distance of Ock, so as to tell him to lay low and keep still if he wanted to get even a sight of duck or geese or swan. I hadn't gone far though before I found that I had been accusing Ock wrongfully. I got a glimpse through the reeds and first saw one big bear, then another, making their way along, snorting and growling and grunting. 2 of them were black bears and the other was a cinnamon color. If it had been Ock himself, I couldn't have been any madder, for I knew that them bears would be just as likely to scare duck or geese or swan away as Ock would. Thunder take it, says I. I suppose I might as well kill him and be done with it. There ain't any duck or geese or swan in sight, and the sound of the gun'll be out of here and the smell of smoke be gone before any of them fowl comes along more than likely. It won't be a bad idea anyhow to bag them 3 bears, long's there ain't anything else in sight. So I took out my duck or geese or swan shot cartridges and shoved in buckshot. I was just on the point of knocking over the biggest bear, a snorting big black fellow that stood darn near 5 feet high, when somebody grabbed hold of my shoulder. I looked around and there was Ock Morse looking scared. What be they, Pocky, says he. Bear, I says, 3 rip-tearing big bears. Set down there and see me bag 'em, I says. Thunderation, says he, getting more scared every second. Don't bother him, let's run, says he. Run, says I? All the running I'll do is to run a few ounces of lead into each of them bears, says I. Just then the big black fellow at the head of the 3 saw us and he lifted up the bristles on his back, gave a snort that made Ock Morse jump 4 feet in the air, and rushed toward us like a runaway engine. Ock grabbed hold of me and hollered for help. The bear was about 30 yards away, and in spite of Ock's holding me and dancing around like a wild Indian, I blared away. The bear jumped in the air, clear to the top of the tallest reeds, and they stood 3 feet higher than my head, turned a double somerset in the air, and fell on his head in the soft marsh. His head sank in clear to his shoulders, and there he stood, like a clown doing a trick in a circus. He gave a few kicks, and the sight was so blame comical that I just fell back in the reeds and youped and yelled. Ock's eyes hung way out on his cheeks, and all he could do was stand there and gasp. When I could control myself, I got up. The bear was still standing on his head, and he was as dead as a telegraph pole, his hind feet sticking up straight and stiff in the air. The other 2 bears had come up and stood looking at their companion. It seemed to me just about as scared as Ock was. I pulled up to settle him, but Ock grabbed me and begged me so to take him away from there that I felt sorry for him and led him back to the blind a mile away. Say, Pocky, said he, when I got him back there, don't say nothing to the other boys, will you? They might guy me. I promised I wouldn't say anything about the bears, and when I got back to my blind, the 2 live bears was gone, but the dead one stood there on his head just as he died. I shoved him over and buried him in the marsh, and Doc Phillips nor Harry Morse don't know to this day that I seen 3 bears that day, much less killed one. Captain Oscar Morse commands the steamer Holmes on the Lake Keuka Navigation Company's fleet of steamers plying between Hammondsport and Penyon. He is a veteran steamboat captain and a great sportsman. Yes, said he the other day. I'm going down to North Carolina again this winter after ducks and geese and swan. I haven't been down there since I was down with Doc Phillips of Penyon and Harry Morse and Pocky Griswold. I had a great time with Pocky one day during that trip. We were blind hunting for fowl on the Big Marshall on Pamlico Sound, and my blind was something like a mile from Pocky's. The air was clear and a person could see a good ways. Suddenly, I saw Pocky rise in his blind and wave his hand in a violently beckoning way at me. I could see that he was excited over something or other, and I knew that unless he was quieted, we'd never get a shot at a duck or anything else. So I made my way as fast as I could for the thick reeds towards where he was standing. I had to take a roundabout way on account of the creeks and bayous that lay between me and Pocky, and I'll bet I traveled 3 miles before I got to him. At last, winded and tired, I got within fair speaking distance of him, and he put his hands up and hollered, "Och, bears!" There are bears aplenty down in that country, but I didn't think it likely that they had come out of their rich feeding places in the gum woods to slosh around in the marsh, and as soon as I got close enough to Pocky to talk without yelling, I told him so. There's a very choice breed of razorback hogs down there, and I thought maybe Pocky might have run across some of them. "Can't be bears," I said. "Hogs, I guess." That made him mad. "Hogs be damned," he hollered. "I guess I've lived in Steuben County long enough to know a hog when I see one. They're bears, I tell you. 2 big black grizzlies and a slammin' big cinnamon. They're right over yonder in the reeds raising Cain. I see 'em." "Well, Pocky," I said, "they may be bears, but if they're grizzly bears and cinnamon bears, they're worth taking in with us, no mistake." "2 of 'em is grizzlies and 1 is a cinnamon, I tell you," said Pocky. "Nobody can fool me on bears." We were making our headquarters with a man named Hodges. He had a good deal to say about a boar he had that was worth all the hogs in that country, and he set great store by it. We had never seen the boar, but we had great respect for it. When I got to where Pocky stood, blazing with excitement over the bear he had discovered, he and I went carefully along so as to not frighten the game away. The reeds were shaking as if a gale was passing through them. Before we had gone far, out came 3 tremendous big razorbacks. "There," said I. "I told you they were hogs. Let's get out of here." "Not by a blamed sight," said Pocky. "Wild boar, by Jupiter. Better than grizzly bear, a blamed sight." The big hog came along towards us, and Pocky held his fire until he saw the whites of the boar's eyes. Then he filled its head with buckshot, and it fell dead as a stone. The 2 other hogs came up and rooted at the carcass. Pocky was for dropping them in their tracks too, but I said that if there was going to be any wild boar hunting around there, the rest of the party must have some of the fun, and got Pocky to let the other 2 live so that we could go out next day and have some sport with them. "Don't say a word to the boys, Ox," said Pocky, "and after supper tonight, I'll tell them a story about wild boar hunting that'll make their hair curl." So I didn't say a word. After supper that night, we spread around the fireplace at Hodges, and I saw that Pocky was getting ready to spring his wild boar story on the boys. Just then, Hodge came in. We knew something had gone wrong right away. "What's the matter, Hodge?" said I. "Well, sir," said he, "some orny cuss has gone and killed that cracked boar of mine, and if I can find out who he is, I want to tell you that this neck of Hyde County will be a little too tarnal hot to hold him." Pocky didn't tell his wild boar story, not that night. I don't know whether he ever told it at all or not, but this is it. This story comes from the great state of New York, being reported in the New York Sun of October 21st, 1894. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.